Hey everyone, Shushack Redemption back in action here to share my next creation. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at my 1984 draft class. It's one of the highest downloaded so far, so thanks for that. Looks like people are enjoying it. I went ahead and did finish at least my first round of the 1983-84 updated roster, so I want to show that off. And then I also uploaded a scenario that will have the draft class I created already incorporated. So let's just jump into it, and I want to show you what I've done. So if you go to create a roster and choose 1983, go to user created, and I don't get to see mine, but I think it's the fourth highest right now. Yeah, it'll be called 1983 updated dash players added. So again, online ID is yippee-ki-a. So currently 357 downloads, pretty cool. Thanks to those. I did check out a few of these others, and while I'll just honestly say they have a few more players included than mine do, I don't feel like they spend as much time on those players. Like some of them don't look anything close to what they did. I don't see any sign of like updated tendencies or anything like that. So I just want to say for the people I've added, and I'll show you some of them, I spent quite a bit of time on each of them, making sure they look appropriate, they have the right data like age, numbers, attributes, tendencies, gear, so accessories, contracts, all that stuff I've made sure. So here on the Sixers very first, I've got Andrew Toney added. Okay, he's not perfect, but he looks pretty good. Sadell Threet's down here. So every team has at least an 8-man rotation of real people. And even teams that had 8 or more players, I still added any like key player, especially if they're missing a starter or an all-star or anything like that. I made sure to add them to the game. So for the Sixers, I added 2, Toney and Threet. And it'll be interesting to see if I can remember everybody I added. And let me just kind of go through the teams as I share some other things too, and it'll probably remind me of some weird things I ran into. For the Bucks, I think their team was pretty much full, so I didn't do anything. Every team has 14 players. That way, when you start a new My NBA, it won't add anybody randomly to the team. So they have 14, so everybody's a valid roster. Everybody that is not real is a 67 overall or worse. In addition, I changed their numbers all into the 90s, so it's easy to identify. Like if you get further in and you're in free agency and you're not sure, okay, is this a real guy or an auto-generated guy? Hopefully their jersey number will help be a tell on that. For the Bullets, they were one of the shortest teams, I believe, so I created Ballard here. It's a pretty good-looking Ballard. And then Frank Johnson, who I know of more for his late years in the with the Suns, but here he was the starting point guard for the Bullets. The Bulls, I added both Orlando Woolridge here as well as Mitchell Wiggins down here. So they've got a pretty thin team of 8, but I will show you here. I did the rotations for each of them. So if you were to use this roster and play now, or if you get it into the My NBA and you use all the teams, and especially if you like turn injuries off or anything like that, they'll actually have the rotations. Just know as soon as you give the computer control of any of these teams, they're going to do whatever they want with the rotation. So it won't be super realistic, but if you turn those things off, you can have a pretty authentic experience. So I'll just keep going through here and pointing out some new people I've added. The Cavs were missing one of their starters in Lonnie Shelton, so he's been created. Otherwise, they're a full team. The Celtics, this was an interesting one. When I got to them, while they had everybody they needed, I didn't create anybody for them. A couple of the guys were off in numbers. So both Gerald Henderson, I think they had him as number 12, which he was later on, but in this what is supposed to be the 83-84 season, he was number 43. And the same sort of deal with Wedman. He was 20 originally, which he was, again, later on with the Celtics, but in 83-84 he was number 8. at least according to Basketball Reference, which I don't feel like they have much wrong on their website. So I looked at those to make sure that numbers are updated as well. I tried to make sure positions were altered if anybody was off. Here, the Clippers, I think this Derek Smith I created. Otherwise, I didn't do anything with them. I did go through, there were a few people, not that many, but my brother and I, when we were playing actually a 1991 season, we found a few people where their ages were off. Like they took them from one era and put them in the other and forgot to change their age. So there were a few people where I had to change their age. Years pro, maybe a few people were off as well, based on that. So for the Hawks, I created Roundfield, who I remember in my last video I mentioned would be one of the guys that they would need because he's an all-star and starter for them. So he's one of the better players I created. For the Jazz, I don't think I created anybody. I think they had everybody enough to make a rotation anyway and not missing any key people. The Kings were pretty good. I thought I created somebody, but it looks like I didn't. They have 8 people? Okay. It's kind of hard, so I went through team by team and kind of created people as I went, so I don't remember right off the bat who I created. I definitely created Ray Williams, who's a starting guard for the Knicks. Otherwise, they had enough people to make a pretty good rotation. So you can see again, just to show off a few of the rotations. You can see they've got 10 guys playing. Oh, I can explain this too. So Campy Russell is on the team. Again, I just did this to make it a realistic roster. If you really want to play with them as they were in 83, 84, 2K did a pretty good job of getting people on the teams as of the beginning of the season, which is perfect. So Campy Russell was on here, but in reality, he didn't play. He blew out his knee and missed actually 2 seasons. So I went ahead and gave him a torn ACL and put him out for the season here. And obviously, if you remove that, and you can have him as a player for the Knicks, but if you want it to be realistic, he's out. Lakers, they had almost a completely full team. I think Willie Mullen down here is the only auto-generated guy, so didn't do anything with them other than give them their rotation. So you've got them, even though they have 13 real people, they have a 9-man rotation based on how many people really played these minutes. So Michael Cooper playing big-time minutes off the bench. Mavericks, I made Pat Cummings, who was a starter. I think that was the main guy they were missing. They already had quite a few people, but that's an example. They had actually 10 people before, but they were missing a starter. So I went ahead and created him, and it helped really make their rotation a little bit more realistic. The Nets here, I don't remember creating anybody, so I don't think I did. I think they were good to go. The Nuggets, I created Hanslick. I was pretty proud of what I got him to look like based on pictures I found of him. Some of the people I created, I found YouTube videos, again, of people who had created them on past games and try to get it close to that. That's pretty helpful, but people like Hanslick, I didn't find any history of him being created, so that one I'm actually pretty proud of for kind of a somewhat obscure guy. But I also created Rob Williams here, who was their starting point guard. Pacers, I created Sidney Lowe, who I know better as a coach, but that gave them an 8th man. They're still the worst team in the league. I think when I went in, they're an 81 overall, and I'm pretty excited to do my NBA with them, so hopefully I can draft Michael Jordan with them. Be cool. Pistons here. This one is interesting to share. I guess, I don't know if they removed it from the game entirely or just from the retro rosters, but Antoine Carr, while he was drafted, and technically I think he could have been under contract with the Pistons, he played internationally. So he didn't play with the Pistons in 83, 84. But when I go to edit, where I'm used to there being under contract an option to make them a Euro stash player, that doesn't exist. It's just core and two-way, and there's no option to make them a Euro stash. So I would have given him a 1 year Euro, but I can't do that for some reason. I haven't gone in to see if it's available in other types of rosters or if it's just disabled for these retro ones. So my workaround for that was because he didn't really play for the Pistons, even though I guess he was technically on the team. He's out with personal reasons for the season. You can see their rotation here. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they'll have to patch it, especially if it's out completely. I realized that also later on. I looked at the draft class to see if you could add it there, and you can't. So while I started making a 92 draft class, and there are a few people like Popeye Jones and PJ Brown, and I think even David Wesley. They're all in that draft class technically, but they all played overseas, and you can't give them any Euro years. So I don't know how to make that work. There are people by default in the draft class with those years that have the little 1 or 2 or 3 coin next to them that say they're delayed, but you can't create one yourself that way, which is very odd. Rockets. I recently did these, so I just finished some of these teams today. Lewis Lloyd was a starter, as well as Caldwell Jones was a key player. So you can see here their lineup. They've got a 10-man rotation, even though they have 12 people. So again, not everybody's going to be in the rotation, but I did it based off of how many minutes and games they played to make it as realistic as possible. The Spurs here, I made Mike Mitchell, who was I think overall wise, the best player I ended up creating. I'm not really too familiar with him, but looking at his stats and his history, he's pretty good. So he was definitely missing for the Spurs. And then we get to the Suns, who I did not create anybody. They had a pretty full team as well. The Supersonics here, I created Al Wood and Danny Vranis, who were both starters, so very important. This was, again, the Sonics had enough people to do a rotation, but I didn't feel right having them without 2 of their starters. So they're now in there. The Blazers, I didn't create anybody. They had quite a few already. I still think it's pretty cool that there's a 79 overall rookie Clyde Drexler here. Excited to play with him. And then the Warriors, this is the last guy I just created, was Larry Smith, who is their starting power forward here. And they have a rotation of 8 now. They're kind of stretched thin, but I didn't really see anybody worth creating beyond that. Thanks to Shah. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of this, and it didn't take me too long, which was nice because, I mean, these rosters to start with, I got to give 2K props for just having so many people on the game, even finding some of these weird things like people's numbers and ages and whatever being off. Like, it's so minor, it's hard to care that much about it, but yeah, it really helps when all these guys are on the game. So there's the roster. I will put in the just description of the video afterwards, again, how to find it if you didn't catch that in the beginning, or if, I know not everybody looks through the whole video, maybe they'll just get it from the description. But if you want to combine the best of both worlds and get the roster and the draft class, you can also go get my newly created share scenario. So if you go to 2K share scenario and you go to download a new one, I'm guessing it's probably in the newest. Yeah, so you can search for 1983-84 realistic or search for my online ID yippee-ki-a again. And what I did there is I've selected all the teams for a couple different reasons. One is that way you can choose which one you want to be, and they'll still have their set rotations that I gave them. So if you want to be all of them, if you want to be some of them, if you only want to be one, it'll help out that way, and you can play with the real rotation if you want to. I have injuries turned off right now, so nobody will get new injuries. I thought that might be nice since some of these teams have 8-man rotations, and if you want to avoid fake people playing as much as possible, then that's the way to go. If you want to turn injuries back on, go for it. You'll just probably have a lot more auto-generated players getting some stats, which isn't terrible, but not the way I would be doing it myself. But that's up to you. The other thing was I did go ahead and load in my draft class. So if I go to the prospect scouting, you can see all these guys, all the real people here at the top, and you can see people like Barkley and Robertson that I added in. So you can go to the mock draft and see how things are falling right now. So, hey, that's what I was talking about, getting Michael Jordan on the Pacers. That's what we need to do. Also, just to point out, like another great thing, they have the picks here, like the traded draft picks, even from 1983, 84, are already in the game. So you can see that the Clippers have two, and they came from the Sonics and Warriors. I'm assuming that's the case. I have no reason to doubt that. I guess I could look at it and find out, but another little detail that 2K did well with. So that's, I think, all I have to show. You can come here and see the overview. The cap space is pretty cool to see. I think they're like $12 million cap, or what was it that I saw? No, it's not that. 12 was for 1991. How do I see the... Why am I'm missing something right now. Finances. There we go. So 7.5, they're 4 million over. So the salary cap's like $3 million. This is just crazy. Another thing that I noticed when creating some people, you can't give them contracts as low as what they have on the game. So that's another thing that I think 2K could patch in. The lowest you can technically create somebody with is 1.02 million, which when your salary cap is 3.5 million is not very good. So I didn't have that case for too many people. I guess you can see Threet and Tony here. Eventually I started just editing auto-generated players into my created players. I had no reason to really, especially if I wasn't going to reuse them in another roster, I didn't need to save them as a created player, so I just edited existing players. So there are some people that are making $1 million, but these fake people that are on the teams are already making $1 million. So hopefully it's, a year or two and their contract's over, and then I don't know. I haven't done free agency in this era yet to see if people want 1 million and it just totally screws up the salary cap. I'm excited to try that now that I'm done with the roster. So I'm going to get to that. Maybe I can still do some of that tonight. Hopefully you have some fun with this as well. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you like. I'll probably next do the 85 draft class so that I can kind of play it from here and have the real players to bring into the league year after year. Again, I already have the 92 draft class done and the start of a 91 roster. I went ahead and shared it, but I'll be updating that kind of the same way I have this 1983. So I know a lot of people will probably be wanting to start at the 91 roster to already have like a prime MJ to play through. But I want to start from the beginning that the game kind of lets me. So thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please give me a like, subscribe if you want to see more of this. And yeah, look forward to any comments you have. Till next time, Shoestack Redemption is out of here.